I really like how it's becoming more common to see famous actors in TV shows these days. TV shows are always getting bigger. Season 1 of Game of Thrones had a budget of $55 million. This makes it the most expensive TV show ever made. The pilot of Boardwalk Empire alone cost $18 million. More money is being pumped into these shows. This allows for bigger actors and actresses to actually come in and appear in them, such as Kevin Bacon. I really like Mr. Bacon. He's obviously really well respected in his profession. Sorry, I've forgotten the name of that film in which Kevin Bacon won an Oscar for his performance. So I was just searching for it. He hasn't even been nominated for one. He must have been the only person in Mystic River not to win an Oscar. Nicolas Cage has won an Oscar. Anyway, when big names come to television, I always try and check it out, like I did for Matthew Perry's Go On. Seriously, don't watch it. So Kevin Bacon plays Ryan Hardy. He's a former FBI agent who spends most of his time consuming alcohol and wallowing in his misery. He switches on the television one morning to discover that his arch nemesis, Dr. Carroll, has escaped from the maximum security prison that he was being held in. We find out through a series of flashbacks that Ryan Hardy is the one who actually caught Dr. Carroll, but in doing so he suffered an almost fatal stab wound to the heart. Dr. Carroll is a serial murderer, by the way. So far it seemed a lot like Red Dragon, if any of you had watched or heard that. So in the first episode, Carroll's able to kill some people and kidnap his own son before he's caught and put back in prison. Despite Dr. Carroll being behind bars, we find out he has a group of followers who are willing to do his bidding. This is probably going to make up most of the series content. Safe to say that Carroll has become fascinated with Hardy. He's created all these situations because he sees them both as characters in his new book, in which he's the villain, Hardy's the flawed hero. I really enjoyed the pilot. I was worried from the opening that it was setting out to be a bit cliche. I think we've all seen the serial killer FBI agent face off before, but the characters are unique and interesting enough to make that not the case. The second episode showed the same intensity. We find out why Hardy doesn't work for the FBI anymore. It's because he was rogering Dr. Carroll's ex-wife, Claire Matthews, which is a tad inappropriate under the circumstances. This also helps to explain Carroll's fixation with Hardy, as it probably derived from jealousy and hatred over many years. We also find out that Carroll's son, who he kidnapped in the first episode, is being held hostage by 3 of Carroll's accomplices. I really enjoyed these scenes because there's a bit of an awkward threesome going on between those 3 characters. Episode 2 also focuses on Emma and how she becomes a psychopath that follows Dr. Carroll. So far so good. I really like the cast. Obviously James Purefoy plays Dr. Carroll. The interactions between him and Kevin Bacon are very well written. Natalie Zia from Justified plays Claire. Maggie Grace is also in the pilot before she gets killed off. No one tell Liam Neeson. I completely stole that joke from him. I'm really sorry to whoever came up with that. Billy Brown, he's also in Dexter. He's also around the place. And do you remember that really annoying guy from the X-Men films? Yeah, he's in it too. So here comes episode 3. Oh no. Look up behind you. Look up behind you. Oh no, he's dead. So that was episode 3. Again, that was a really intense, fast-paced episode. I'm starting to really enjoy this show. Okay, so I'll briefly go over what happened this episode. We start off with Geordie. He's one of Carroll's accomplices. He was also the bad guy last episode who got caught. Hardy and his female FBI partner Parker, they decide to interrogate Geordi to find the location of Carol's son. Geordi has a bit of a mental problem, so the interrogation doesn't go very well. Hardy then loses his patience and actually ends up hitting Geordi. Don't see much of Joey, Carol's son, this episode, but we do see his 3 kidnappers. As I said before, it is a bit of an awkward threesome between them. We see tensions rising between Emma, Jacob and Paul. I'll explain it a bit. Jacob and Paul, they had to pose or pretend to be a gay couple in order to successfully kidnap Joey. The reason it's awkward is because Jacob and Emma are actually in a relationship. This means Paul's getting really jealous, and he does actually have homosexual feelings for Jacob. We also see a few flashbacks to all the accomplices, how they first met. These flashbacks involve Geordi as well, and also a new accomplice called Rick. I know this is quite bad, but I'm really starting to like Paul, Jacob and Emma. I think they're obviously bad characters, but they're really entertaining to watch. So as I said, we're introduced to Rick now, who's he was one of the bad guys this episode. Rick is a pyromaniac. I think that's the word. He's obsessed with fire, basically, and he also follows Dr. Carol. The start of the episode is actually Rick setting someone on fire. The FBI's main priority this episode is to track down Rick, because he's out there actually murdering people. They manage to successfully track down Rick's house, and they don't actually find Rick in the house, but they find his wife, Maggie. Hardy and Parker then proceed to interrogate Maggie. She claims to know nothing, and they believe her. It's then actually Agent Parker who then decides to interrogate Carol to find the whereabouts of where his son is, Joey. Of course, she's not really able to get anything from Carol. He's too smart for her. He again mentions that about his story and how he feels that all the events that are unfolding are just it's kind of a plot for his new book. He actually says everyone has a story to tell. Carol then talks about his downfall, about how he actually got put into prison, and he says 3 people are responsible for his downfall. Hardy, who's listening in the CCTV footage, he actually works out who these 3 people are. One of them is of course himself, because he's the one who actually caught Carol and put him in prison. They work out the second one is a critic who actually gave a bad review on one of Carol's books. The man we see Rick set on fire at the start of the episode is actually this critic, so this man's already dead. Hardy also works out the identity of the third person Carol was referring to about his downfall. But just as Hardy realizes who this man is, we then see that Rick has actually already killed him anyway. Carol also, in the interview with Parker, he also says, who does Ryan Hardy blame for his downfall? Carol is constantly comparing and relating himself to Hardy. This aggravates Ryan to a very high extent. I think Carol brings out Hardy's dark side, and he's always reminding him of how he has damaged himself. We're then back at the house where the threesome are holding Joey hostage. We see that Paul just cannot stand watching Jacob and Emma be together. He has such strong feelings for Jacob that he gets really angry and actually storms out of the house. Jacob warns Paul that if he leaves, someone might recognize him from the news and they might get them all arrested. But despite this, Paul gets in the car and drives away. Paul drives into the nearest town and actually seduces a local girl there. Paul and this new girl, they go somewhere private and they start getting off, but then Paul starts getting a little bit creepy and actually knocks her out and then kidnaps her. We don't really know what Paul's doing. He just seems to have lost it a bit. He's gone crazy over his jealousy between Jacob and Emma. The last scene we see of those 3 is Paul actually brings the new girl back and they tie her up in the basement. We get to see a lot more of Parker this episode. She's a really strong character and adds to the show. Parker interrogates Geordi, and she's quite clever about it. She's able to trick Geordi into telling her everything he knows. Geordi actually reveals that Maggie, Rick's wife, has been working for Carol all along. Maggie's actually under protection back at her house by Agent Riley, or Billy Brown. Before Parker or Hardy are able to warn Agent Riley that Maggie isn't who she claims to be, Maggie actually kills Agent Riley. I really like how unpredictable the show is. You know, it's not afraid to kill off characters at any point. This was really obvious in the pilot when Maggie Grace got killed off, and now Billy Brown, only 3 episodes in. So who knows what's going to happen next. Rick was actually hiding in his own house where Maggie and Agent Riley were. Rick tries to run away with Maggie, but Hardy intercepts him. Rick and Hardy are having a little scrap and fighting over the gun, whilst Maggie is actually able to escape. Hardy then ends up shooting Rick and killing her. My favourite parts of this episode were actually flashbacks of Carol and Hardy when they first met. This was when Hardy was just starting his investigation of the murders that Carol had committed. Of course, at the time, Hardy didn't know Carol was the actual murderer. Hardy actually seeks out Carol's help because of the style of the murders. They're a lot like the poems of Poe. So he's an English lecturer, so he naturally goes and seeks his advice. Carol seems to be really helpful in the investigation, and the way him and Hardy are talking in the flashbacks, they seem like really good friends. The final scene in this episode is actually Geordi kills himself back in real time. He feels he's betrayed Dr. Carol because he revealed the identity of Maggie. It's not really a big problem Geordi's gone, because he'd already revealed everything he knew. So it was overall another great episode. It kept up the same pace and intensity as the previous 2 episodes. I'm looking forward to the next episode as well. I think we see a lot more of Jacob and Paul, how they're going to deal with this new girl that Paul's kidnapped, and I don't know how Emma's going to be involved in that. Each episode we're seeing more of the characters' backstories and how they're all linked together, and I'm sure there'll be more of that next episode, so that'll be very interesting. The next episode is called Mad Love. It's next Monday, so I'll be watching that when it comes out, and posting another video. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did, and you should be looking forward to the next one as well. I'll see you guys then.